Babies are intrepid explorers. From the moment they start breathing and even in the womb, they're playing with their sensory experiences, trying to discover more of their brand new world. And it's exciting to be a part of your baby's new discoveries. Well, with us once again to help extend your baby's discoveries is nutritionist and dietitian Heather Ferguson from the Heinz Infant Feeding Advisory Service. Thank you for joining us today, Heather.
It's a pleasure.
Now, we looked at previously when you introduce solids to a baby, it's like from the age from 6 months, around 6-month mark, to about 9 months. Now, that's introducing solids in terms of a pureed form or mashed form, and it's really important, obviously, for the texture. As they get older, you increase the texture from what I understand.
Around 12 months, your child will be starting to enjoy a family-style pattern of meals, obviously of foods that are going to be suitable for them to eat. So if you're having roast and vegetables, then you'll need to cut up the roast so that they can obviously manage. And very small meals. Remember, their tummies are very small. They're not going to sit down to 3 big meals like perhaps we might, but 3 small meals, and they will need to probably snack as well, morning and afternoon, just because they've got small tummies. They're only going to eat a small amount at a time.
And what sort of snack food should we be looking at?
The thing that's happening at this time too, around 9-10 months, babies are wanting to feed themselves. Finger foods are a great idea because it helps their manual dexterity, so small things that they can pick up with their fingers and chew on. One of the things that's really important at this stage is to minimise the risk of choking. So chunkier foods within their meals is, you don't suddenly introduce something that's full of pieces of corn, for example. But if you've introduced other foods that are softer and lumpier prior, then your baby will learn to manage that. When a baby's self-feeding, the important things to avoid to prevent choking are hard foods. Something that's very hard and small that could easily be inhaled by a child who's excited, for example.
Like corn kernels?
Corn kernels, potentially. Things like nuts. Popcorn is a common choking hazard, which we recommend avoiding. Bits of sausage, for example. Sausage is not a good idea for a young child because the sausage can break off in chunks, in small chunks that could actually potentially choke a child. A small lamb chopped with the bone, not sharp bits obviously, is a good finger food for a child to chew on at 12 months of age.
You mentioned something perhaps about their appetite.
You often hear mums say, my previously ravenous baby who would eat anything on earth has suddenly turned into a fussy toddler. And that may not necessarily be the case. What happens is that babies are born at, say, 3.5 kilos weight, and by 12 months they've tripled that birth weight. So they're growing very, very rapidly in that first 12 months. But around 12 months their growth rate slows, and so they're simply not as hungry. And at 12 months too, I mean, a child is starting to develop their own likes and dislikes. That by this stage there will be some foods that he may not like, and you need to respect that. There's absolutely no point sitting at a table and trying to force a child to eat if they don't want to eat whatever it is that you're offering. The rule of thumb is you decide what and when a child will eat, and let them choose if and how much.
Right.
So if they don't choose to eat and they're not hungry, then remove the food, mealtime is over, we'll come back again in a couple of hours when you're hungry. The trap that parents can easily fall into is that the child doesn't like or doesn't want or doesn't eat what has been served for a meal, and parents might think, well, he hasn't eaten, so therefore I'll try something. Well, what about?
Yeah.
And so you fall into a trap of offering, a range of different foods, until you could end up in the terrible situation of some parents I've heard say to me, but my child will only eat chips.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible situation to be in. You don't want that situation. So if you don't offer them, if you stick to your guns and say, here's what's for lunch or dinner, and encourage the child to eat it, but if the child really doesn't want to eat it because they're not hungry, then...
Or if they don't like it.
Yeah.
But, okay.
But you need to offer a variety of food. Toddlers are notoriously finicky. They'll go for days when they may not seem to eat very much, and then 3 days later they go through a couple of days period where they seem to eat ravenously. It's because their growth rate is fluctuating and their appetite fluctuates.
Now the big one, they're throwing food everywhere. Should we encourage this or not?
Kids love to feed themselves, and it's part of their learning experience. It teaches them dexterity to be able to reach and pick up a food and put it in their mouth. Often they will eat something, they will feed themselves quite successfully when they don't want to be fed by mum or dad. And so I think the story is you just need to get used to mess.
Yeah.
You know, food experience comes first, and if that means learning what mashed potatoes feel like, squished through your fingers and
through
rubbed
your
all
hair.
over your face, well, you know, that's
Yes.
part of the experience of food.
Okay, well, now we've talked about food. What about drinks at 12 months of age? What should we be looking at?
Yeah, at 12 months, if a child is being breastfed, they can continue being breastfed for as long as mum and baby are comfortable with that. If they have been fed infant formula, then at 12 months it's time to move on to cow's milk as their main drink. Water is still the best thing for a child to drink. They don't really, they don't need cordial or soft drinks in their diet.
Just quickly, how do you encourage them to eat healthy food? People talk about not liking vegetables.
Children learn to eat what is familiar. So the family as a role model is really important. So that's quite an important, if the family are eating and enjoying a range of vegetables, then your child will learn to, the youngest child will learn to do that as well.
Okay, so obviously when introducing solids or now onto the more advanced stage of feeding your child, you want to make it as interesting as possible. And if you run out of ideas, if you're looking for inspiration in cooking a new way of vegetables or other sorts, you can go to your library for books, you can just get some books off the internet.
Or
sources.
you might perhaps ask your child health nurse.
All right, yeah.
Or obviously sharing ideas amongst your mother's group. I mean,
Yes.
mums are, everyone else is going through the same thing. So sharing ideas is very helpful as well.
That's very true, actually, talking to other mums and
Yeah.
your friends and family. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Your wealth of information has been fantastic. I'm really looking forward, to the food fights in the toddler years. It's going to be great. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
There's room to grow.